Do you know that one of the most terrifying mysteries in history didn't come from myths or legends, but from a real, documented case that's more chilling than any horror film ever made? Tonight, we uncover the true story of the Dyatlov Pass Incident, a real event that has haunted investigators for over 65 years. The evidence suggests something impossible happened. And no one, not even the most brilliant scientific minds, can explain it. It all begins in January 1959. Imagine 9 young, strong, and incredibly experienced hikers from the Ural Polytechnical Institute. They weren't amateurs. They were the best of the best, setting out on an expedition into the vast, snow-covered Ural Mountains. They were young, intelligent, and highly trained in survival skills. Looking at the photographs from the beginning of their journey, you see them laughing, smiling at the camera, full of life and confidence. This was supposed to be just another adventure for them, one of many they had conquered before. They promised their families and friends they would send a telegraph signaling their return in about 2 weeks. But that message never came. They never returned. When weeks turned into a month and there was still no word, panic began to set in. Search teams were dispatched into the unforgiving wilderness, hoping to find them alive, perhaps just delayed by the harsh weather. But what they discovered was not a story of survival. Instead, it was one of the most horrifying and baffling scenes in the entire history of mountaineering. High on a slope named Kholat Syakhl, which ominously translates to Dead Mountain in the local Mansi language, the rescuers found their tent. It was completely abandoned. But it wasn't just empty, it was destroyed. The canvas was ripped, shredded from top to bottom. The most unsettling detail was how it was cut. The slashes weren't from the outside, as if an animal or another person was trying to get in. No, the tent was cut open from the inside. This one detail changes everything. It means that whatever happened, the hikers weren't trying to keep something out. They were desperately trying to escape something that was inside the tent with them. Inside, their belongings were left behind in a state of sudden, inexplicable panic. Clothes were scattered. Warm jackets remained untouched. Their heavy, essential winter boots were still lined up neatly, as if ready for the next day's trek. Yet, the entire group had fled into the brutal, minus 30 degrees Celsius snow, some of them half naked, some completely barefoot. They ran from the relative safety of their shelter into a frozen wasteland, a decision that makes no logical sense. What could possibly be more terrifying than freezing to death? The search for the hikers themselves led the rescuers down a horrifying trail of discovery. The first 2 bodies were found nearly a mile away from the camp, down the slope by a large cedar tree. They were found next to the burnt-out remains of a small fire. They were wearing only their underwear. Their hands were scraped raw, and branches on the tree above them were broken, suggesting they had frantically tried to climb it, perhaps to get a better view or to escape something on the ground. 3 more bodies were discovered between the tree and the camp, frozen solid in positions that suggested they were crawling, desperately trying to make it back to the tent they had just fled. They were frozen mid-crawl, their faces buried in the snow, a silent testament to their final, agonizing moments. But the most disturbing discoveries were yet to come. It took another 2 months for the snow to melt enough for the search teams to find the remaining 4 hikers. They were located in a remote ravine, buried under more than 10 feet of snow. And it was here that the mystery deepened into something truly nightmarish. These 4 had suffered injuries so catastrophic, investigators said they were comparable to the force of a high-speed car crash. One man had a crushed skull, another had his ribs shattered with such force they had pierced his heart. Yet, mysteriously, their skin was almost completely unmarked. There were no external wounds, no bruises, no signs of a fight. It was as if an immense, crushing pressure had been applied from inside their own bodies, breaking them from within. The horror didn't end there. One of the women, Lyudmila Dubinina, was found with her tongue, eyes, and part of her lips missing. Again, there were no animal tracks, no footprints other than their own, and no signs of a struggle or another person being present. Just the silent, frozen bodies and the deafening silence of the mountain. As the investigation continued, it only became stranger. When the clothing of the deceased hikers was tested, scientists were shocked to find significant traces of radioactive contamination. It was an abnormal amount, far too high to be natural. This discovery fueled a storm of speculation. Were they near a secret Soviet weapons test? Did they accidentally witness something they were never meant to see, something classified and highly dangerous? The Soviet government at the time was notoriously secretive, but they have never provided an official answer that satisfactorily explains the radiation. The case file was abruptly closed, with the official cause of death listed as a compelling natural force. A vague, unsatisfying conclusion that explained nothing. What really happened on that mountain? Over the decades, countless theories have been proposed, but none of them can fully explain all the bizarre pieces of this puzzle. Let's look at the most common ones. An avalanche. It's a plausible theory for a mountain, but the tent wasn't buried in snow, and the hiker's own footprints were found undisturbed leading away from it. An avalanche would have wiped everything away. What about an animal attack, like a bear? Again, there were no claw marks, no bite wounds, and no animal tracks found anywhere near the scene. A secret military experiment gone wrong. This could explain the secrecy and maybe even the radiation, but it doesn't explain the crushing internal injuries with no external marks or the missing tongue and eyes. Some have suggested more fringe theories. Could it have been a yeti or some other unknown creature? Unlikely, as there were no non-human prints found in the snow. Another theory involves infrasound, a low-frequency sound that can induce feelings of panic and dread in humans. Perhaps a natural weather phenomenon created this sound, causing the hikers to go mad with terror. This might explain the panic and fleeing the tent, but it certainly doesn't account for the brutal internal injuries or the specific mutilations. Some believe the group saw something the world was never meant to know, something inhuman, something unnatural, that drove them to their deaths. Others think they were simply driven mad by terror itself, a shared psychosis in the desolate wilderness. But the question that burns through 65 years of history is this. Why did 9 highly trained, rational adults cut themselves out of their own tent and run to their deaths in the freezing dark? What did they see in the night? What did they hear? What walked through the snow that made them choose a certain, agonizing death over staying inside their shelter? To this day, no one can answer those questions. The case remains officially unsolved. And that is what makes this real, historical, documented event far scarier than any ghost story ever told. Because it actually happened. The photographs are real. The autopsy reports are real. The terror was real. And whatever caused it could still exist. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into one of history's most chilling unsolved mysteries. If you found this story as haunting as I do, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more explorations into the unknown. Let me know your theories in the comments below. Stay curious and stay safe.